Dr. Gary May is the 7th Chancellor of the University of California, Davis. He most recently served as Dean of the College of Engineering at Georgia Tech, where the school graduated more engineers than any other in the United States. Dr. May graduated from Georgia Tech and obtained his master's and PhD in electrical engineering and computer science from UC Berkeley. He joins us today to share his story and his vision for UC Davis. Next on Studio Sacramento.
At Five Star Bank, we create thoughtful solutions to help the Capital Region thrive, from economic development and education to public health and safety, issues that are vitally important to Sacramento's prosperity. We're proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
Given your success at Georgia Tech, why uproot your family at this point in your career and move all the way to Sacramento to UC Davis to take over this position?
Well, first I'll say you're right. I had a wonderful career and wonderful experience in life in Atlanta at Georgia Tech. I wouldn't have traded for anything. But the opportunity to come to UC Davis and be at the helm of one of the nation's very best public research universities was too good an opportunity to pass up. And as far as my family is concerned, the timing was worked out fairly well for me because both of my children, 2 girls, are in college now. So the uprooting really wasn't as stressful or as traumatic as it might have been had they been younger. And they were both very supportive and very excited about moving to California. My wife has joined me, and she's also very, very enthusiastic about the change of scene.
What led to your passion in engineering and computer science in the first place?
Well, you know, I think I'm a typical story. I was one of those kids who took all the aptitude tests that said, you know, you're good in math and you're good in science, you should consider engineering. I also had side interests in building models and Lego and erector sets and jigsaw puzzles, science fiction, comic books, all those sorts of things. Many of those interests I still have, by the way. And all that sort of led me to the path of engineering, and I was lucky enough to be selected to be in a program in high school which was called Develop Engineering Students, which was sponsored by McDonnell Douglas Corporation, which has since been acquired by Boeing, which is in my hometown of St. Louis. And in that program, about 30 kids like myself from around the city were brought in for the summer to do engineering projects, to take some classes, to have the mentorship of a professional engineer. And that was also fairly pivotal in my decision making.
How important are those STEM type programs to reaching and exposing kids to that type of opportunity?
I'd say they're critical, particularly for students from underrepresented minority communities that have not necessarily had the exposure to STEM fields. No engineers in my family other than me at that time. So I didn't really know what an engineer was from, personal experience. So the fact that I was involved in that program allowed me to meet and talk to real engineers and understand what they did. That was very, very important in my development.
And I've got to ask you, science fiction and comic books. Mm-hmm. Now, I've heard tell of a picture of you in a Star Trek uniform.
Yeah.
that I saw before. Give us just 1 or 2 examples of the type of comic books that you followed.
I still follow them. I actually was just at a comic book store earlier today in Sacramento. I enjoy the superhero genre of comics, the team books, the X-Men and Justice League and Avengers, some of the individuals as well. But I always tell people that, first of all, I learned how to read by reading comics at a young age because you had the pictures and the words, you could put them together. So before I even got to kindergarten or elementary school, I could read pretty well. And the fact that the characters are using their abilities to do some good always appealed to me and continues to appeal to me.
I ask you the question because I also share that passion.
You're right.
And my love of science came actually from reading comic books and then having to investigate what I was reading about in the comic books later on.
Yeah.
And I found in talking with a lot of children that happens.
Yeah. It's a very important way to expose our youth to the opportunities in science and STEM in general, and in a sort of a stealth way. You're doing something entertaining, and the young person gets curious, as you did, about, could this really happen? How do you build such a device? Could I travel in outer space? Could I be transported? And all those sorts of things lead you to get interested in physics and chemistry and mathematics, and hopefully could lead to an engineering career.
So you've taken over an institution with a long and distinguished history.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, though, if you had been on the search committee for UC,
Mm-hmm.
what would have led you to choose Gary May for this particular assignment? What about him?
Well, I think one key fact is that engineering deans in particular, and especially deans of large programs, have many of the same issues that arise for presidents and chancellors. I led a program that had nearly 500 faculty and about 13,000, almost 14,000 students. And the resource issues, the facilities, the fundraising, the dealing with outside organizations, including media, the legislature, I had that in my experience and in my background. So it translates very well to the current situation. In fact, I would say a dean is probably a much better match for a chancellor/president than perhaps any other role at a university.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And your former institution, Georgia Tech,
Mm-hmm.
and the college that you were the dean of has the reputation of turning out more engineers
Right.
than any other institution in the
That's
United
right.
States. And there was a recent article in Forbes that talks about the delta between how many engineers we're turning out in this country and, say, China is.
Yeah.
What is it that what factors led to the success that Georgia Tech had under your tenure?
Well, I think the mission of the institution was very STEM focused from its inception. For a long time in the state of Georgia, Georgia Tech was the only university that was allowed to grant engineering degrees. So you focused all the resources and all the student interest in one place, and it leads to that sort of result. I think that the benefits of doing that were tremendous. What I hope happens here at UC Davis is that we're also able to decide on what we want to be when we grow up and focus on some key areas and build strength there, and that strength becomes a way to be the rising tide to lift the boat of the university.
And that speaks to vision.
Mm-hmm.
What is your vision projecting out 5 to 10 years in the future for UC Davis as opposed to where it stands today?
Yeah, well, let me just start with where it stands today, which I think is an impressive, certainly a very impressive place. I mentioned one of the top public universities, research universities in the United States. That's the best veterinary medicine program in the world, the top agriculture, food science program in the country, exceptional capabilities in medicine and law and business and engineering and all the professions. So there's a lot of building blocks there that are available. What I'd like to see happen at Davis is that we, one, have a stronger connection to Sacramento and the business community for the purposes of economic development and other reasons, particularly because in this day and age, and at public universities in particular, people want to know what the return on the investment is. And I think universities have a role to play in innovation and in job creation and in taking ideas from the laboratory to the marketplace eventually. So I think UC Davis can have a very exceptional and positive, prominent role in doing that in this region.
One of the problems that has existed historically with regards to UC Davis and the rest of the region is that it seems that causeway is not just a physical barrier, but it's a psychological one.
Mm-hmm.
Any ideas on how it is that we can more knit the region together so that UC Davis's presence is completely synthesized into the rest of the region's activities?
Yeah, some of the early discussions I've had about that involve sort of the low-hanging fruit of improving the transportation between the city and the campus. More frequent bus availability. Perhaps we do something very innovative and put autonomous vehicles on a path between the city and the campus on a regular basis. Perhaps we do better with maybe there's a bike path, maybe there's a light rail system, but I don't want to get too far ahead of anyone else's plans or what I know about the constraints here. But those are all things that we've talked about. But once we've solved the problem of feeling like we're too far away, then I think a lot of the other issues begin to resolve themselves. I think in my experience in my previous institution, we had a very successful development in the city of Atlanta that now I'll admit the distance was not as great as it is between the distance between Davis and Sacramento, but reaching out to the city and putting some facilities actually in the city and landing spaces for corporate partners and amenities like hotels and bookstores and things like that, and academic programs that would draw the students and faculty. It was a very exceptional success story, and that's something I hope we can mimic, perhaps not duplicate here in Davis and Sacramento.
And along that line, as a newcomer with a set of fresh eyes, what immediately struck you as some of the underexploited or underleveraged opportunities that you see for UC Davis to really advance itself or make a demonstrable impact on its mission?
Well, I think a lot of it is simply doing a better job at telling the story. I think someone from the East and my colleagues and friends, if they were not academics, didn't know much about UC Davis. And so when I took this job, they were like, "Where is that in LA? Where is that?" That sort of conversation. And there's so many positive attributes already in existence at Davis. If we just do a better job at sort of telling the story in a consistent and cohesive way, we will raise the profile that way. Now we also have to continue to elevate and be excellent by hiring the very best faculty and attracting the very most talented students, and continuing our long-time mission in social mobility and economic opportunity for our students, and public service, and all those sorts of things, sustainability, all the sorts of things that have made Davis famous here locally and in the state. Those make for a compelling story nationally and indeed internationally.
What areas of the university where it hasn't quite met its aspirations do you think you'll spend a lot of time on initially trying to shore up or move forward?
Well, that's a dangerous question for a new chancellor to answer. so I'm going to deflect a bit. I think specific directions and topics are really the bailiwick of our faculty and our researchers in our community. I will certainly have opinions and be able to express those and provide resources and direction, but I don't think it works well if top-down sort of edicts come out of my mouth. I think what we'll try to do generally is to build on existing strengths and think about opportunities where we can have impact here locally as well as nationally in grand challenges that society is facing and how we can help solve them.
Actually, you opened a door. Share with us, what exactly is the role of Chancellor on a campus like UC Davis?
The Chancellor is essentially the chief executive officer, if you will. In many ways, the face and spokesperson for the campus, the person that has to respond to the policies and procedures that are dictated by the regents and the president, the person that has to go out and raise money for the university, the person who has to have the final decision on issues and conflicts and problems that invariably happen at any big organization, the person that has to be the chief cheerleader for the university. All those things are part of the role of Chancellor.
And those are all big macro issues.
Right.
Let's step down to the student level. When you're thinking about the students, undergrad and grad students, that ultimately the institution serve and that you serve,
right.
When you wake up every day and go about your job, what are you trying to accomplish for them?
Well, let me say that if we didn't have students, we wouldn't need a university. So the students are the most important aspect of my job, and I take it very seriously. I have college students, college-age students in my family. I understand the importance of that. I've told the students, and I've said this in my some of my introductory meetings and conferences and media opportunities. You know, the way I live my personal life is I try every day to learn something, to help someone and make the world better. And if we can get the students at UC Davis to think like that and use that as a guide in their own lives, we'll be doing something very positive. And lastly, I'll just say, we don't want to be a place where we are training. We'll do more than that. We don't want to be a place where we're educating. We actually want to empower our students. That's the word I use. We want to empower our students to be, you know, agents of their own success and career and destiny. And I think that will make them, that will differentiate them from their peers as they go forward to be leaders in their professions.
Who inspired you?
I've had many really great inspirations, starting with my parents, who took education for myself and my sister very seriously and made sure we took it seriously. My mother's a public school teacher, a retired public school teacher. I've had very good mentors throughout my career. I can name several, including one who was the first African-American professor in engineering at Georgia Tech, where I got my undergraduate degree. He was very much a role model for me. More recently, having the experience to work for and to sort of learn from a former president, again at Georgia Tech, Wayne Clough, who went on from that role to become Secretary of the Smithsonian. Still a great friend of mine, still someone I lean on for advice and wisdom. He's probably, if you have to blame somebody for me becoming a chancellor, he's probably the one with the most blame.
And what would you say that was the most important lesson you took from your mentors?
I think being a good listener, taking everyone seriously, not elevating yourself above the people that may work for you or the people that you may be serving, trying to be egalitarian in your approach, being a statesman, being thoughtful and not making rash decisions. All those things, I think, being accessible, being transparent in decision making, those are qualities I think I pride myself on and things that I've observed over the years from the people I admire.
And when you look at your career up until now in total, what achievement among all the achievements that you've had, which one stands out to you as the one that's most resonant with you?
Well, I think the one that aligns most with my passions and my spirit is my ability to be successful in expanding, broadening participation by underrepresented students in STEM fields. In my career at Georgia Tech, I was involved in a number of programs. Some I developed, some I helped with, some I led. But the overall impact was that we became the national leader in engineering degrees granted to women and minority students. And I was fortunate enough, yes, in addition to the overall number of degrees, we led for more than a decade now. I've been the national leader. I say we is now UC Davis. My former we, Georgia Tech.
It takes a little while to unroll well.
It does. I have to watch those pronouns. But as a result of that, I was fortunate enough to be recognized at the White House by President Obama 2 years ago and received an award for STEM mentoring, which is something I will cherish.
When you think about the programs and the lives that you touched through those efforts, is there any one interaction with a student that, you know, comes to mind in terms of embodies how much power opening those doors has for an individual?
Yeah, I'll mention one example, and there are many, but one that, and he's going to probably get tired of me, if he sees the show, he'll get tired of me using him as an example, but one of my former PhD students, his name is Cleon Davis. When he was a young boy growing up in Florida, he was, you know, someone said he had special needs and he was diagnosed as being, having a learning disability, I believe. And so he was, you know, put in the special class and, you know, I believe rode the special bus, you know, those sorts of things. And I think in his case, he had a mother who was very tenacious and really advocated for him and got him into the mainstream there. And he went from being a kid who was quote unquote slow to having a PhD in electrical engineering from a top 5 engineering college in the United States. He's now a member of the professional staff, the technical staff at the Applied Physics Laboratory at Johns Hopkins.
Wow.
And so I have a lot of pride in helping guide Cleon through his PhD. He's an African-American student, so that the lesson there is how many other students like Cleon are stuck in the special class or inappropriately, grouped, not according to their ability, but according to maybe their behavior or the lack of foresight of the public school system.
And when you talk with your colleagues or policymakers, who make decisions on budgeting and, control of access and things like that, when you think about a story like Cleon's, what is it that those people need to know that sometimes because of dealing with things on the macro level that we all tend to forget?
Well, I think the most important thing is we need to think about how the decisions we're making at the macro level are going to impact the lives of the individuals. And it would do us all some good that are in decision-making roles to be involved in activities where we get to touch those individuals, because that will inform our decision-making and our actions, I think, in a much more fulfilling way than looking at spreadsheets and other things that we have to do in making those macro decisions.
Another big macro issue that's being talked a lot about on college campuses these days is the whole issue of freedom of speech.
Right.
And that there is a notion among some that academia is being closed, is closing itself to ideas. How do you intend to pursue the tradition of open exchange of ideas and freedom of speech, and at the same time balance that with all of the other pressures people have for tolerance and all those other attributes that we all talk about so much?
Well, I'm an enthusiastic believer and supporter of freedom of speech. We hope that UC Davis will be a place where any people with diverse points of view will feel welcome in expressing those points of view. Some of the speakers that, and I won't start naming them, but I'm sure there'll be speakers on campus who the only thing I agree with is their right to speak on our campus, but we will make sure that happens, with the caveat that my most important and sacred responsibility is to provide a proper educational environment for UC Davis students. So I'm not going to be supportive of someone who wants to provoke or incite. We're going to have people that want to educate about whatever topic or point of view they'd like to espouse. But if it's just a provocateur, I'm less interested in that. The other issue will be the safety of our students. So we want to make sure that we have the proper venues and the proper security and all those sorts of things, so that some of these incidents that you've seen erupt on other campuses are not happening at UC Davis.
Do you have any ideas why this issue has become such a political hot button these days?
I think it pushes people's buttons. I think it's used by certain political actors to raise money and generate resources and generate attention and to gin up fevers and furors and things that might sway voters. I don't think it's, in many cases, I don't think it's a sincere, I don't think many people are sincerely concerned with the issue of a free expression of ideas as much as they are with sort of furthering their own agenda.
And in looking at the agenda of the university as it moves forward, you've touched on things about educating and empowering and training. And there's been a decided sort of push to make college education hyper efficient. Is there still room for exploration in the college experience, given the fact that between cost and the need for it to translate to a sustainable income vocation, that you can still do all those things?
I think there has to be room for exploration. Otherwise, at the university, where else would you do it? We have to have enough flexibility in our system so that we allow our faculty and our students to think about basic discovery and basic science and basic critical thinking. those explorations of those ideas will not only improve their educational experience, but I think will make them more valuable employees or help them to have more success later in their lives and their careers. Now, at the same time, we do have a responsibility as a public institution to be good stewards of the public's resources. And so part of that is ensuring that our students, when they graduate, get some return on that investment that they've made and their families have made for those 4 or 5 or 6 or more years at our institution. So we have to be mindful of placing those students and making them attractive to employers and giving them the opportunity to have successful careers, as well as being efficient in our own internal processes at the campus.
And we're going to leave it there.
Okay.
Chancellor May, welcome and much success to you.
Thank you very much, Scott.
And that's our show. Thanks to our guest and thanks to you for watching Studio Sacramento. I'm Scott Syphax. See you next time right here on KVIE.
At 5 Star Bank, we create thoughtful solutions to help the Capital Region thrive, from economic development and education to public health and safety, issues that are vitally important to Sacramento's prosperity. We're proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
All episodes of Studio Sacramento, along with other KVIE programs, are available to watch online at kvie.org/video.